This week on the IoT Podcast.
Well, I think in general, in our industry, the way things progress now, one day equals to a year type of thing. A lot of developments happen in the industry space, in the academia space, in the innovation space, more awareness, more technologies, more use cases.
Yeah, I think the other thing is like the community aspect. I mean, any of these projects it's a team sport, right? There's no one company can go in and kind of solve the problem on their own. So it does require coordination and cooperation from semiconductor companies, software companies, system integrators, device builders, the whole thing. Yeah, from edge to cloud. And that's one of the, I think, strengths of the tinyML Foundation is that we are about that community.
What has changed in this 2-year or less than 2-year time frame? Maybe you can talk about tinyML for good as an example.
You said by 2040, the energy produced in the world will be going just to feed the AI machines.
But what is happening now with GenAI, actually, this number is accelerating. So it's probably going to happen not by 2040, it's probably going to happen even like sooner now.
Wow.
Because there are more workloads running there. We are trying to play a very important role, not only on the commercial side of growth, but also just to make sure we grow it in a way that does not basically kill ourselves. And I think to me, it feels like a little bit like a snowball, maybe like a wildfire. It just like when you start, it just goes, right?
Yeah, snowball, wildfire. Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's a really challenge, it's the reality, but it's also one of our strengths, it's the diversity.
Welcome back to the IoT Podcast. I'm your host, Tom White. Every week, we are joined by the biggest names in IoT to unravel the trends, misconceptions, and predictions for the Internet of Things. Before we get into today's episode, don't forget to subscribe on whichever platform you're watching or listening on, and turn on that notification bell so you're never out of the loop. Hi guys, welcome back to the IoT Podcast. I'm thrilled to be here in Milan today for the tinyML Foundation's Innovation Summit 2024. I just wanted to announce before this podcast starts that our brand 5V Tech has signed a partnership agreement with the tinyML Foundation to help the community build technical teams. 5V Tech are masters at building teams in IoT, AI and deep tech. And we're delighted to be working with the whole community as a dedicated talent solutions partner, working across the globe to build technical engineering teams. Please reach out to me directly or some of our team on LinkedIn to find out more about this. Welcome to the IoT Podcast. Welcome, Pete, and welcome back, Evgeni. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to be here.
Thank you, Tom, for having us.
Yeah, and welcome to a rain-swept Milan here. At the 2024 tinyML Innovation Forum. It's great to be here in person, great to see some of the talks and discussions and really the kind of buzz actually today. Lots and lots of people here talking about some really interesting things. So, Evgeni, you've obviously been on the show previously. So it'd be great to kind of talk to you a little bit about what we previously discussed and how things have advanced since then, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So, a couple of things that we spoke about in our previous podcast when we first discovered tinyML and brought it to our viewers and listeners. You were talking around the fact that there was over 70,000 students enrolled on the tinyML EDU course online. And that's a colossal number actually back then. And how have things evolved since then, Evgeni?
Well, I think in general, in our industry, the way things progress now, one day equals to a year type of thing. A lot of developments happening in the industry space, in the academia space, in the innovation space, more awareness, more technologies, more use cases. It's really kind of this like more like a snowball effect now, which is quite amazing to be a part of this. But to answer specifically your question, Tom, talking about the educational aspect of tinyML and Edge AI in general, more and more people are getting aware of this, more activities in the academia, more global activities all over the world around the space. So back then, I think we had like 70,000 people. Now it's over 100,000 people in, if I'm not mistaken, in 176 countries around the world. And it's massive, it's explosive to the point that now we are teachers who teach students. So it's like those kind of things. It's really growing big time in the, again, education space, workspace, and it's mind-blowing. I think the opportunity ahead is huge. And that's why we are reinventing, in a way, tinyML. It's still a relatively young organization, like five years, but it feels like it's been like for quite some time. And we get to the point, we want to bring more energy, more momentum, more opportunities in this community, what we call tinyML 2.0. And this is a transition that Pete, our new executive director, is driving big time. And one of the pillars of this transformation is education. So Pete, maybe you can elaborate on that piece.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's sort of like, how do we cultivate the next generation of AI leadership, right? And it turns out that AI, I mean, 5 years in AI is like a lifetime, right? So, but now it's like we're seeing so many students and also, early in career and mid-career people getting trained on AI and understanding what's going on. And so the ability to do it, I talk about doing AI where the data is created, right? So that's edge AI, that's tinyML. And that has the kind of the lowest cost, lowest power, highest impact for AI. And so we're seeing lots of people get involved with it. Companies, deploying all kinds of solutions, for their digital transformation or what have you, but also students and professors and other folks getting involved. And it is worldwide. It's amazing the amount of, it's really challenging. One of the challenging things about the job, my new job here, is the time zones. It's like managing the time zones. Like I'm dialing into these calls from Sub-Saharan Africa or Europe or Asia. Just this morning we were talking about how do we get on a call with Taiwan tomorrow. So what time is that? So, but that's a good problem to have because it is worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a nice problem. I mean, 70,000 to over 100,000 is colossal. I think there's a lot of organizations and technology subsets that dream of having that level of growth. And of course, welcoming you, Pete, into the tinyML Foundation. Your background is formidable in itself, and that shows the progression, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely mainstream stuff. Look at the energy out in the hall, and the chips are getting faster, the software is getting better, the solutions are getting less expensive, and some of the demos out there are incredible. And even a few years ago, you couldn't imagine people being able to do that.
Yeah.
And just to make it more specific, I think when we spoke about this a couple of years ago, I think it was more in the proof of concept. All the companies had some demos to showcase their use cases. Now all of these companies, they have products, customers for these and also next use cases. So it builds kind of this reality momentum that they think is real. It's now, and it's like mind-blowing, like what is happening. Just now we had a presentation from the keynote presentation from the Luxottica. Yeah, that's actually one of the largest, if not the largest, eyewear company in the world. Their market capitalization is over 100 billion. It's like 15th largest in the world by market capitalization. And for them, energy efficient machine learning, AI, is a must to advance their technologies, their product in the future, both in the consumer space, like for Ray-Bans, they own the Ray-Bans as a brand and other type of brands. But personally, I think talking about the for good aspect of this, I see a lot of opportunities applying these technologies for medical condition. They show one case there using tinyML for hearing loss because for aging population, people already have their eyeglasses, and you can apply a little bit of tinyML, AGI type of technologies to enhance it, to correct it. And you don't need to have another type of device like hearing aid that looks ugly, it's kind of inside of your ear. It's just your eyeglasses, and it solves like a real problem now. And I think we should also appreciate the reason why it's happening now, because tinyML community invested 5-7 years building the foundation base for this in terms of technologies, supply chain, all these kind of things. So that's why companies like these, they can come now and they can start use this type of technologies to basically make a big impact, massive impact in the world, like with this type of use cases. And another use case that I'm kind of discuss it with the speaker there is using this type of technologies for medical conditions, not just for corrective things, like if you use eyeglasses, it's a corrective, I think, but also for diagnostics and for treatment, and not necessarily vision related. For example, some of the brain conditions, you can detect them and monitor through the eyeglasses, like for example, by measuring the frequency, your eye tracking, by doing eye tracking and how your eyes move, you can detect some conditions like concussions and this type of thing. You can detect them earlier. Like for example, talking about concussions, there are 20 million concussions happen in a year, and the majority of them stay unknown, undiagnosed. So by using this technology, you can diagnose them at the right time, but also you can have a technology to treat them not just to correct, but to treat. And this is massive in terms of impact. Again, this is just an illustration that technology got to this maturity point, and we have the serious companies looking at taking them to people, to the marketplace. And this is just one vertical, one example. So I think that's what keeps us up is, and we've been talking about this before, it's kind of talking about the boomerang effect. 2 years ago, we were thinking that this would be happening, and this is happening now. And we see kind of there will be more and more momentum for this type of 100 billion type of companies using this type of technologies for very practical use cases for consumers and for good.
Yes.
It's really very, very rewarding to see this happening.
Completely. I mean, I really enjoyed that keynote. And for our viewers and listeners, Luxottica, it is the largest eyewear brand in the world that owns several brands of sunglasses. And I think that perfect example of the kind of Ray-Ban Meta collaboration is just kind of the first step in a massive transformation, which really brings it home for me. You know, things that consumers will use, but has a benefit in terms of not just from a leisure perspective, if you say medical, combining, hearing, technologies all in one, and that's driven by tinyML, right? I mean, that's really impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the other thing is like the community aspect. I mean, any of these projects it's a team sport, right? There's no one company can go in and kind of solve the problem on their own. So it does require coordination and cooperation from semiconductor companies, software companies, system integrators, device builders, the whole thing, from edge to cloud.
Yes.
And that's one of the, I think, strengths of the tinyML Foundation is that we are about that community.
Yes.
And helping the community collaborate, and accelerate, frankly, the deployment of this technology. Right. So that's pretty key. I was going to also say, like, the one of the interesting things too. I mean, we haven't talked about GenAI, but GenAI is starting to make a play here too on the edge, and in terms of the tinyML as well. We're seeing, large language models. I would say like small language models, tiny language models, maybe.
Tiny GenAI.
Tiny GenAI, whatever the word is. Running on a lot of this, low cost, semiconductors and cores and things like that. And I think we're going to see a lot of combination of, sensor AI and generative AI working together to do some really interesting things. And so a lot of our members are starting to invest in that. We had a symposium a couple months ago on that. We're going to have another one coming up because things are moving just so quickly.
Yes.
With GenAI. And I would say the difference here is that, and I like to tell people about, there's sort of two big AI stories in the world right now. The one big AI story that people know is the Scarlett Johansson chatbots.
Yes.
Gigawatts of power and oceans of groundwater and acres of data centers and all that stuff. And it gets a lot of hype, and it kind of freaks people out a little bit. And then there's if you took all of that and flipped it over, then there's all about, well, what if you used less power, less cost, and had more impact? And I think that's the kind of AI that this community is focused on, which is kind of exciting. And maybe not as glamorous, but like Evgeni was saying, like huge impact on people's personal lives, on companies doing transformation. And that could be, in consumer markets, but also we're seeing things in agriculture, water treatment, industrial automation, maritime, all kinds of interesting verticals that are using this stuff. So
and maybe just to add to this, I think this is one of the values that this tinyML Foundation adds to the community, but I would even say more boldly adds to the whole society. We are eliminating the path, what is possible, in a very practical way, like what we were saying 2-3 years ago, like these technologies are coming. Hey, people, you can use them now. Think about integrating them in your products.
Yes.
And it's happening now. So I think the next wave now, like what Pete mentioned with GenAI type of capabilities, we were the first tinyML Foundation saying, hey, people, there is a lot of talking about using this on the cloud, which is great. It will be all these big companies that are going to continue this innovation. But hey, don't forget that this type of capabilities can be used also now for the Edge AI type of applications across all verticals. I mean, that's the thing. And we had one workshop, we did it in March, it was huge interest, close to 1,000 people there. And we think instead of, we're going to accelerate our programs in this space as well, the one in the fall coming. And that's, again, one of the missions that tinyML Foundation brings to the whole society, showing this is possible and connecting players, connecting the dots there. And when we do the next podcast with you guys, it will be, again, another boomerang effect, right? We talked about this in 2024. look, now it's like everywhere, right?
I know. I mean, it kind of brings me on to my next point. Some of the things you're discussing there, I get a sense that, collectively we're raising the sea here, right? With AI, and all the boats are rising. And I get that sensation with, people talk about, the meteoric rise of NVIDIA, but actually that's had a knock-on effect with tinyML and some of the tinyML members. The business is growing, more interest, more people here today. Yeah. Do you think that there's a kind of a gold rush type thing here at the moment with AI and lots of people wanting to get involved and, it having a positive outcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain extent, the kind of the hype around the big AI is good as well, because it is drawing people in to understand more about, the typical question is, well, what can this do for me or for my business? Yes. And so then they start to dig into it and they realize, well, I can do some things on the cloud, but actually I can do a lot of things on-prem, at my business. Yeah. And so I think that's great to kind of just generally, I would say every Fortune 500, CTO right now has an AI strategy. And I suspect Edge AI and tinyML is going to be a part of that strategy too. So in that sense, it's great. We have now, as part of our community, some folks in the VC world that are looking for interesting investments, which is great to see as well, because, we have a lot of young innovators that are trying to do some cool stuff. Yeah. Young companies. So it's bringing money into the community as well as excitement, which is good.
Right. And just to illustrate, talking about the positive effect that GenAI creates for Edge AI type of community is in the past maybe 6 months or so, we are sensing very strong FOMO effect, fear of missing out effect, in the end user community. When we were talking about this 2 years ago, people were thinking, yeah, it looks interesting, I'll think about this. So now kind of the equation has changed dramatically. It's not like I'll think about this, like I need it now. I don't want to fear. I have a little bit of fear. They don't say it's fear, but we sense it's a fear that we may miss it out. We want to be involved. We want to invest. And then again, it comes now not from the technology people, but it comes from the end users. Pretty much like what Pete said. All the big companies, they want to include this type of capabilities in their roadmaps or even like in their current project. And that creates the pull force that we were talking about 2 years ago. Because 2 years ago, it was more like a push force from the technology down. So now this GenAI helps us to create this pull force. And this is also going to accelerate as people are going to see more value, just like this company, and more momentum there. It's really a great time to be in this space.
I'll give you one scenario that some of our members were talking about, that combines GenAI and tinyML and Edge AI. So, like in a hospital room, there's all this data, all these sensors that are detecting things, right? And so one of the things that GenAI can do, you can use transformer models to sort of interpret all the sensor data and kind of make sense out of it. So imagine if like a nurse walks into a hospital room and all that sensor data is feeding into some, GenAI-based edge box. And she's able to sort of, get a readout of what's happening with this patient, using like English like regular language. And so she can sort of get briefed on like, here's how the patient's been doing for the past 24 hours, and actually getting all that quickly without, looking at a bunch of dashboards and devices. So I think we're going to see that sort of handoff or kind of orchestration of AI workloads between, sensors and gateways in the cloud. And that's going to be kind of the new way that people are thinking about this thing.
And Tom, to switch gears and also to answer a question on what has changed in this 2 year or less than 2 year time frame, maybe you can talk about tinyML for good as an example.
Absolutely.
I think when we talked about this back then, we thought, tinyML and edge efficient technologies are going to be great for the society at large because it's low power, it's affordable. It has very positive implications on sustainability, obviously privacy-related questions, AI democratization, all these kind of things. Again, talking about what is different now, the message became louder and stronger in many ways, and to the point that like everyone is talking now about AI for good, tinyML for good. Just a month ago, less than a month ago, there was a big event here in Geneva. AI for Good and tinyML Foundation had a big presence there with a separate session and kind of thought leadership there. And it was like a huge sold out effect. So I think the AI for Good and the GenAI brings two aspects of this. Like one is big, like everyone is excited about this. but there is also it's a double-edged sword in a way, because the way it evolves so fast, people are thinking like maybe it evolves too fast, when we need to think what it means in terms of ethical issues or other type of questions. And I think we, tinyML Foundation and Pete in particular, we are very deeply involved in this type of discussion now. And this is one of our strategic directions, in addition to the market growth, is the advocacy angle, and also the for good educational angle there. How do we, with this fast dynamics of these changes, how do we educate policymakers and other guys that this capability is there? So in addition to the kind of to the scary part of AI and LLM and killer robots and other things, there is this other part of AI, which is actually a good part of AI. Yes. And I think Pete was here, maybe you can also talk about this. He was at the World Economic Forum in San Francisco about a month ago. There was a great discussion on this topic. We are launching some initiatives on this. Kind of again, we are not just talking, we're doing things. That's another kind of difference with tinyML Foundation. We launched the scholarship fund with 5V tech support, and thank you for doing this. We see more companies join this. So we're really doing practical steps both on the advocacy side, but also on the for good side as well. Maybe Pete, I mean, I know you're very passionate about this.
Well, so the foundation is now part of the World Economic Forum AI governance group, and so we spent a day basically representing sort of the Edge AI universe in that conversation. I mean, most of the people in the room were, like I said, more used to sort of the big cloud AI stuff, but talking about what we can do with Edge AI in terms of privacy and transparency. And the other thing, in terms of the AI for good and some working with NGOs, the nice thing about the AI that the community is building is that it typically is very low cost, very low power, and so you can deploy like solar powered sensors and do all kinds of things where, you know, especially in countries that are challenged and in municipalities that are challenged with budgets and cost and power, frankly, people can deploy things for, you know, agriculture and crops and water systems and things. So we're seeing a lot of practical applications where this can really bring real impact. And, you know, I think the fact that it's disconnected from the cloud in some cases and has better privacy guidelines and other things is really intriguing for people that are thinking about responsible AI and things like that as well.
I think that's a great point to bring up. You know, there's been a lot of talk in recent months around, you know, deep fakes and watermarking in AI and concerns about, you know, killer robots and, you know, where's this going? And it's good to see that this AI for good movement is at the heart really of how you then develop onwards, because I would imagine there's quite a lot of fear amongst consumers, but also businesses in kind of losing control of that. Right. So to have that at its core and to build on, I think is crucial in order to get further investment and further businesses joining that movement. Would you say so?
Like even in mainstream, I mean, like what Apple's doing with the iPhone and bringing AI workloads onto the device itself.
Indeed, GPTs.
Qualcomm too.
And Qualcomm as well. And everyone, you know, people want to have control over this AI thing.
Yes.
They want to say, I want to run my AI here. I don't want to, you know, be beholden to one or two companies in the world that, you know, have all the GPUs.
Yes.
And so if we can like run this here and be in control of it and have real impact, I think that's very appealing for businesses and governments, you know, and people. So I think that's an interesting extra bonus of the value prop of tinyML and Edge AI is that it gives people a lot more control and privacy over the data, which is interesting.
Right. Yeah, I think we're adding this component to the cloud AI, because cloud AI is going to develop. It's a massive capability for the good and other reasons. But Edge AI brings this kind of grounding component of this. How do you control your data? How do you use your data in a private way? How do you monetize your data? Like what we discussed last time, the AI democratization.
As opposed to someone else monetizing your data.
Right. And also, how do you make your systems, overall systems, are very intelligent and sustainable in a way? Because we know, and we spoke about this last time, when you run AI on the cloud only, it's not sustainable. We were talking about 2040 will be the kind of the Armageddon day when we are going to run out.
I think I have a quote with you saying that actually. Yeah.
What did I say back then?
You said by 2040, the energy produced in the world will be going just to feed the AI machines.
Yeah,
that was your quote.
That actually wasn't coming from me. It was from a professor from MIT.
Oh, you can take it.
Yeah. But what is happening now with GenAI, actually, this number is accelerating. So it's probably going to happen not by 2040. It's probably going to happen even like sooner now.
Wow.
Because there are more workloads running there. I mean, when we spoke 2 years ago, there was no GenAI was like a normal trajectory. Now it's a kind of a accelerated trajectory now. So this number, so that's why I think having this sustainable energies is super important now. And how do you connect these energies to the cloud type of AI to make sure the whole system is energy efficient? And there are smart ways to do it. It's not like we are competing. It's complementary end-to-end solution that we're developing.
Like energy harvesting.
Energy harvesting too, right. And I think tinyML Foundation, the community, is becoming an essential part of this kind of all sustainability and thing. And then again, to be very specific, we're not just talking. In September, we're going to have an event in Washington, D.C. that is supported and funded by some of the government organizations there. We're going to bring the government organizations and technology people, and we are going to be talking about how this type of technology changing the sustainability landscape, why they're important, why we, society and the government bodies, they need to invest more into this type of organizations and events. We're going to have a similar event in Cambridge also in September, talking about this more on the commercial side. But again, we're in the middle of, like you said, we're in the heart of this. So the tinyML Foundation, the community, we are trying to play a very important role, not only on the commercial side of growth, but also just to make sure we grow it in a way that does not basically kill ourselves in 15 years, right? It gives our children and grandchildren some room to live, right? In a very meaningful way. So I think it's super important now, and I don't think we can ignore this. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, indeed. What's kind of next with that then? Because if I kind of look at the IoT world for a moment, and obviously this is the IoT podcast, one of the issues with IoT in the past was standardization, right? And then Matter kind of came in and hoped to change that, to have a kind of level playing field by which people understand the parameters. Right. Moving forward with tinyML and tiny language models, or slightly larger ones, how does that look in the future? Is there an element of standardization here?
I think there's definitely best practices, and we're seeing that more and more. Best practices of how to put these systems together and how to provide transparency and security and things like that. We're stepping up and helping with, for example, data sets, so clean data sets that people can use to train their models on. We're also exploring, partnerships around model zoos and other things. So I think we're going to see a little more common practices, best practices for clean data and good models. And I think that'll help a lot. But I think that we're still there's a lot of innovation going on. So you don't want to actually standardize too soon in the cycle, because then you might stifle some of the innovation. So I think we're seeing a lot of innovation and a lot of best practices. And then as things will get mature, I think we'll see a little more standardization.
Yeah, that's what is happening now, on more discussion, why is it important, what's matter, what is the metrics there? For example, there is a discussion in the community and also in academia on AI energy stickers, right? When you develop a technology, you want to make sure, just like what you put on your refrigerator, this is green, right? Because it meets certain requirements. As part of the spec of this product, it meets some of the requirements on AI, that AI is not burning the planet. And there are some models you can estimate this kind of thing. So this is just an example of this best practices / standardization happening, just connecting why we are doing this to the technology capabilities.
Yeah. I think that's showing fantastic maturity actually as well, isn't it? To start having these thought process fairly early on, right? In the scheme of things. Going to a couple of other points I wanted to talk about today, in terms of the creating the inverse effect with tinyML Foundation, right? And being able to support partners in the growth and bringing new partners in. You mentioned earlier that there was 176 countries there's people involved in
education,
Yeah. So how did we get to that point as well so quickly? It's just colossal. It was really hard to.
Well, it's a very connected world.
Yes.
We have, I think we just reached 13,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel.
And Discord as well. You've got a Discord.
We have a Discord server out now that's kind of a joint effort between academia and the professional community. So we're all having one conversation now worldwide in real time about this stuff.
We'll put the links in the comments for when people.
And so I think people are able to get access to this stuff. I think the value proposition is pretty universal. Like I said, whether you're trying to fix a water system or grow better crops or have better health outcomes, it's pretty universal.
Yes.
And it's lower cost, it's lower power. And so people can get their hands on this stuff and start building and doing things pretty easily. So I think that's one way. I think when you have something where, I need a $50,000 NVIDIA Blackwell chip to sort of get started, then obviously that's going to sort of limit your ability and access. But if it costs you to get an Arduino board or a Raspberry Pi and you can start doing things, I think then people start to really innovate quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I think to me it feels like a little bit like a snowball, maybe like a wildfire. It just like when you start, it just goes, right?
Yeah.
Snowball, wildfire.
Both are growing on its own.
Just to say one isn't putting the other one out.
I was thinking which one is.
Yeah.
And I think part of this is there is a lot of like fuel for this, like the energy is there, all these people and other things. I think where we see our mission from the tinyML Foundation, the community, is really to develop the infrastructure and what Pete calls the operating system, OS. So all this kind of people, all this energy around the world, they can utilize this OS operating system to do things together.
Yeah, right.
We were talking about developing now we're talking, soon you're going to see it, we're talking about developing an exchange platform where people can exchange knowledge, ideas, products, volunteering opportunities, job opportunities, so this kind of things. But again, to make things scalable, that's kind of where we see our role as the foundation. And we are non-profit. We are not making money out of this. We are connected. We are building this type of thing. So that's kind of our role, is to recognize this, to connect people and build the environment in a very large sense where people can participate, they can grow, they can develop value together.
Yes.
Value for good, value for commercial, value for their communities, value for their children, educational value.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where and we're quite unique in this sense.
And I think also we want, for the CTOs that are out there listening to this, if they want to figure out what's the best practices, what's next in terms of Edge AI and tinyML, what's state of the art, we want them to come into the community as well and find suppliers and solutions. And they can learn as well and bring that back to their companies. Because we know that the CTOs are out there. I worked with a lot of CTOs when I was at Microsoft. I know that they they know their business, but they also know that they have some unique challenges.
Yes.
They may not know all what's happening in AI right now. They're probably getting a lot of pressure from their boss about what's the strategy here. And we can help these CTOs and their organizations kind of really understand what's state of the art, who they can work with, and get some answers. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, and I would say, a fairly low cost barrier to entry to do proof of concepts. As you mentioned, you need an Arduino board. It doesn't require tons of investment to do a proof of concept internally to see if it, potentially could have commercial or enterprise value.
Like we have a new working group called Blueprints, which is actually going to be publishing a lot of these kind of it's not really a case study per se, but it's sort of like for a certain vertical, here's the problem and here's how it can be solved, has been solved, by these elements of the community, of these different components and software pieces. And so if you're in that particular vertical, if you're in the agriculture vertical, you can come in and look at these blueprints and you can sort of say, oh, that's how I can solve my problem. Yeah. So I think, beyond the proof of concept, there are real commercial deployable solutions that are out there that I think a lot of these companies may not be aware of that even exist, right? And so why not come in here and leverage the community?
So I think we are basically showcasing this type of possibilities, what is possible, but also collectively we are lowering the barrier for people to join it and do things by these blueprints, reference design by people. Like some examples here, some companies developing libraries for people to use models, and those are kind of free offerings for them. It's again, so people who are not experts in this field, but they're very interested in using AI for different reasons, formal or whatever reasons, they can jump in and with very little help or with some help from the community, they can become experts in this field and do their own things very, very quickly. Because the barrier, again, collectively, we're reducing these barriers, we're reducing the cost to do this kind of things, and that's fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've spoken a lot about the innovations, the growth, etc. I would imagine, like most technology communities, you may have some challenges as well in terms of the next stage. What would you say some of those challenges are, and how would you look to overcome them to grow tinyML?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very heterogeneous community, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just like the IoT space,
Yes.
right? Lots of people doing lots of different things, and so how do you get people, I would say, for lack of a better term, organized.
Yes, and to work together and
so
speak.
that's one of the things we do is we create working groups. We get disparate companies kind of working together on a common cause.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the challenges, is that it's so diverse and so worldwide. It's like, how do you sort of bring people together to sort of get these things done? That's an interesting challenge. But
I wouldn't say it's a really challenge. It's the reality, but it's also one of our strengths. It's the diversity. And we see our job is how do you connect these dots by providing OS, operating systems, all the protocols, best practices, lowering the barriers. Although that's more on the opportunity side than on the challenge side.
Yes.
And it's again fundamentally because the whole community, just like the IoT space, it's so diverse and heterogeneous. How do you kind of create common practices, best practices, and all the tools, infrastructure, so people can get on this and lead and drive?
Yeah, I love that mindset. It's a growth mindset. You can see a challenge as actually an opportunity, right? So the opportunity is to bring together and to work and have people from completely different fields being able to bond over one specific topic. And in fact, I've seen that today, and I've seen the variety of different people here.
And last night too.
And last night, of course, yeah, and last night, and potentially tonight as well. So it's a few late nights. But
we work hard.
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I guess coming to wrap up near the end of the podcast today. Obviously, there's future summits, and people listening and viewing this are clearly going to be interested. Why should they come to a summit, and what would they hope to get out of doing that?
Can I just make a correction?
Please.
It's not about summits. They should just come to us and do things together. It's not once a year type of things.
Yeah.
It's do things every day, and that's what the area we're investing. How do you create this?
Sure.
But summits obviously is the celebration of things, right? People
Yes.
come here to celebrate their success, to share stories, to do. But the real work.
Have some late nights.
Yeah. Well, it's part of the work too. But really, how do we enable this type of community ecosystem that things happen on a daily basis, and people how not to do it?
I think it's like, coming into the community, people can, come into the community through Discord or through YouTube.
Yeah, multiple angles.
On a daily basis, like start learning and start contributing. And we do have these in-person events, which we are also part of our culture. And these are really high bandwidth engagements where you have these serendipitous connections, and it really cements the relationships. And we do those around the world, and we do those through local meetups, but also in some of these bigger events like we're doing here in Milan. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for coming back onto the IoT podcast, Evgeni, and first time Pete. It's been fantastic learning more about tinyML and being here as part of the Innovation Center today, Innovation Forum. Sorry, it's it really is quite breathtaking, some of the things that are going on, and looking forward to a couple of more days of it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Tom, and it's great to see you live in person. We hope to see you again more in 3D in the future.
Yeah, I'm actually real.
I think talking about 5P, also thank you for sharing our vision. It's all about values, it's all about impact, and how do we create this value from the business side and channel this value into projects like Scholarship Fund and other type of initiatives. This is just the beginning. I think it's really great to see this kind of alignment at the values level, at the strategic level, and we're seeing more and more partners joining us specifically for this reason. Not just for the business reasons, but it's more kind of much more above than the business. It's about values and impact, and that's kind of what keeps me personally up at night. I think Pete shares the same type of vision, and it's great to see people who are kind of aligned with us on this type of mission.
Yeah, thank you, Evgeni. I appreciate that, and I'd say the same thing. When we met a couple of years ago, we shared that purpose and profit and values, right? And very much aligned with us. So yeah, great to see you today.
Thank you.
And for anyone that wants to find out more about the tinyML Foundation, we'll put links in the comments to the YouTube, the Discord, and other places, Pete.
LinkedIn is good.
Yeah.
We're on Instagram. We'll be streaming to Twitch pretty soon, so stay tuned.
Yeah.
And we are very collaborative, very open, and the easy way to reach us, it's pete@tinyml.org.
There you go.
Fantastic. Thank you.